What we found has worked for our classroom after collecting all of our assessment in the fall has been that our students freely flow within the room. So by that I mean that they choose where they'd like to be. For instance, one child might decide that they'd like to go to building, and there might be a particular inquiry that's connected to the building learning area. While the children are freely flowing, we're very intentional as educators. So in the mornings, Julie will work on mini lessons, and in those mini lessons, it's differentiated. Students are learning about how to write, they're learning about fine motor skills and how to write their name, and then I'm working with an inquiry group, but in the afternoons, we flip that so that Julie will be with an inquiry group, and I'll be working on my guided reading and my small math groups. And we found that that works really well for us, because while the students are freely flowing and engaging within the classroom, there's always an educator who's inquiring along with them, while another one is explicitly teaching that guided reading lesson. Although I am working with 5 students at one time, the other students are all engaged in inquiry-based and play-based learning. I'll give you an example of that. So for instance, I might be at one inquiry space, but the other children who have consciously made the decision to go to the math area, to go to our creative expressions table, or to go to the building, thinking and building area, it's the environment that really has supported their learning. And in the environment as third educator really means that the first educator of the child are the teachers and the parents. The second educator are their peer group. The third educator is the classroom. So if we're very intentional in how we create this space, and that everything is transparent for them to reach and see what they'd like to use, if everything's at their level so that they can grab it, they're not coming up and distracting us from our inquiry group. The more that you have away from the children, the more they'll come up and say, Miss Babalis, can I borrow that? Or can you get that for me? Instead, the environment is educating them and supporting their learning. So even if I'm not right beside them, and I know Julie is with another group of 5, I can feel comfortable and reassured that that environment will support and provoke their thinking just as much as if I were there. Something else I wanted to share was that oftentimes you think of inquiry as a big chunk of the day where I would be with 5 children. However, I may begin the first 20 minutes to get them set up and give them that intentional mini lesson. But then once I feel that they're independent enough, then I can freely engage with other children in play-based learning or other inquiries within the classroom. So I may not necessarily be at that inquiry lesson for the whole morning. The purpose of these inquiry meetings is to bring us together so that students know that it's a whole classroom, that we're all learning together, that although we have interests and research foci that may vary, we're still learning as a team, and we're bringing back that learning together. It's also a great way to spark interest, and inquiry within our classroom is invitational. So if a student hears something from the documentation and says, oh, that's so interesting, today they're going to paint like Monet, they might very well, during our planning session of our meetings, say, I would really like to join the Sky Inquiry group, or I would really like to join the Flower Inquiry group, and they're never denied. So it's a nice chance for them to not only share their learning, celebrate their learning, consolidate learning, but also intrigue them into maybe participating in something new. So our inquiry meetings involve all of the students in the classroom, and it also involves the 2 of us. In the mornings, I tend to lead the inquiry meeting, and in the afternoons, Julie leads the meeting, and the educator who's not leading the meeting is taking documentation notes so that we have a record of what is being said or what's being demonstrated. And students are then able to learn from each other and see the documentation, even if they're not part of the Flower Inquiry with Julie, or they're not part of the Sky Inquiry with myself. They can take that information that is shared, and we often find that they internalize and spread it into the play and the inquiry that they independently engage in. There are 2 things for materials. They're open-ended. The materials are often brought from children's homes so that they feel that they're part of the classroom. And beyond that, it's very important for us to have high-quality art materials in order to really engage in there. And maybe that's another piece for the Sky Inquiry, getting at their thinking helped when we had them engage in art. So when they painted, it gave them a chance to think about the guiding question and then paint. And after the painting was accomplished, I conferenced one-on-one with the students, and I got such deep thinking because it slowed down that process for them. So having the high-quality art materials made a very big difference because they then wanted to really engage in that art process with you. And we often try to postpone as much as we can so that we can get as much learning along the way. And we might provoke them by putting out those amazing pastels or acrylic paints, and they come in intrigued, oh, I'd like to use those today. And I'll say, that's wonderful, we're going to learn a little bit more about how to use acrylic paint, and let's make a plan about what an artist might need. And that gets into so much literacy before they can even get the paintbrush.